Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. We're starting our show early this morning to commemorate a special event. Today marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day, the Allied invasion of Normandy, France, which was the largest amphibious assault the world has ever seen.
Codenamed Operation Overlord, it also marked the turning point in World War II and helped pave the way for an Allied victory over Nazi Germany, helping put an end to the largest and deadliest war in history. In his message to the Allied invasion force, Commanding General Dwight Eisenhower wrote, "You are about to embark upon the Great Crusade towards which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hope and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you."
This morning, President Joe Biden is joining other world leaders to mark the historic event and pay tribute to the thousands who gave their lives fighting for freedom. This anniversary could also be the last major milestone with the invasion's aging heroes in attendance. More analysis. Let's bring in NBC News contributor Jonathan Alter. Jonathan, good to have you with us this morning. So it was 80 years ago today, more than 150,000 Allied troops landed in Nazi-occupied France for the largest amphibious invasion in history. Talk about the significance of this moment today, seeing these veterans who have returned there 80 years later, and talk about the peace that was won because of what happened 80 years ago.
Well, this was one of the most significant days of the entire 20th century, maybe only rivaled by July 20th, 1969, when man landed on the moon. So it wasn't only the turning point in World War II, which was won, of course, with the help of the Russians. It became a symbol of our desire to fight for freedom and to sacrifice for freedom and to stand up to the strong men, the authoritarian dictators who at that time were trying to conquer the world. And it's almost unimaginable because there's so few people for whom this is within living memory. You see, you have to be literally 100 years old and have been on D-Day when you were 20 to be present today. So it's quite different from some of the other anniversaries that have been celebrated of this event. I mean, I remember as a child watching Dwight Eisenhower talk held on the 20th anniversary of D-Day in 1964, and then Ronald Reagan gave an important and moving speech on the 40th anniversary of D-Day in 1984. But at that time, of course, many of the World War II veterans, like my own father, were alive. And now it's passing into history. And it's up to the rest of us to keep the memory alive, not just of their sacrifice, but of what they were fighting for. And this is what's easy to lose sight of. They were fighting against the idea that might makes right, and for democracy and freedom.
Just so incredible, Jonathan. About 150 veterans, actually, who took part in the Battle of Normandy are set to attend the events today. That's who we are seeing, who the camera keeps focusing on in this crowd. For many, as we're discussing right now, this could be the last major milestone they will see. You sort of just set the table for this, but let's talk about their legacy and how it shaped the world we know today, especially in light of what we see happening in multiple places across the world right now.
Well, this is so relevant to what's going on in Ukraine right now. Of course, Ukraine was the site of major battles during World War II, but with different configurations. But, you know, when Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, it really wasn't very different from when Adolf Hitler invaded Ukraine. And so the Russians were fighting on the Eastern Front, but on the Western Front, it was the Allies and led by the United States. And this is about standing up to aggression. That's what it was. That's what these men died for. And you have to try to put yourself in their shoes. So on the morning of the invasion, they're not sure what they will face when they get on those transport ships to cross the English Channel. And they land in these, they're called Higgins boats. And they're charging there. And I've been to Normandy. I recommend anybody who's watching, make a trip there. Go to the museums, go to the beaches. It's a wonderful trip to take your children on, because you can use your mind's eye to imagine what was in the minds of these men as when the ships landed just offshore, and they had to go charging into Nazi gunfire. You see the concrete bunkers the Nazis were firing from, and the bravery of charging directly into that fire and watching the man to your left, the man to your right, shot and die on the beach. And you just keep moving until you basically take the beach and then move inward amid immense fighting in the hedgerows, they call them, the shrubbery, tall shrubbery just offshore in Normandy. Intense fighting in the hedgerows, and then moving into France, and then into Belgium, and you had the Battle of the Bulge. A lot of fighting ahead, but this was the beginning of the victory. And I think people understood after we took Normandy, after the Allies took Normandy, that this war would be won, and the world would be safe again from the threat of Nazism.
Jonathan, your words paint a powerful picture. Key words we think of today: freedom and democracy. President Biden is set to speak about those topics today and then again tomorrow. What is it you'll be watching for from the president? What message do you expect him to send?
Well, I think, President Biden is very good at connecting the past to the present. We've seen that in earlier speeches that he's given. And there is a direct line from D-Day to the Western Alliance. And he's meeting with our allies in Europe this week. And we must stand together. This is about collective security. NATO, which former President Trump likes to dump on, came out of World War II. We understood that no nation could do it alone. And we had the nations that believed in freedom had to band together. And there were Canadian assaults on those beaches too, that included some of the Free French, and soldiers of other nations took part in D-Day. And that was an indication that we need to join together, that none of this is possible without working together. And I think that's the kind of note that President Biden will strike today.
Jonathan Alter, thank you so much for joining us and kicking us off the history lesson and the great words about our veterans. We so appreciate you joining us this morning. For more on this historic anniversary, we are joined by NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. She is in Paris. Kelly, good morning. So President Biden arrived in Normandy just from Paris this morning. Tell us more about his agenda. We just heard from Jonathan some of what he expects to hear from him. Tell us what he'll be doing today.
Part of what was so notable is the personal moments that the president and first lady had with the American World War II veterans who are here. And there are about 200 of them who have been able to make the trip. And the president met them, took photos with them. You could see conversations with them, connecting in a very personal way. That's certainly a big part of why an event like this is so powerful, because it does connect not only the leadership of the nations that were involved, but it also gets right back to the individual men who were a part of the invasion, who risked their lives, whose lives were probably forever changed by the experiences, and then are still strong enough 80 years later to make the trip to be here to mark this moment. So that is certainly a part of what was certainly a highlight for the White House. In addition, the president will be among those making remarks, and we expect that he will talk about these themes that you heard Jonathan speak of, where there is a relevance today to the importance of the history that was decided 80 years ago, and how the alliances that were a part of that war and then creating the new world order that followed, where there would be secure borders, where friendly nations would not change those borders by force, all of the kinds of things that provided decades of relative peace, certainly in Europe and in many places around the world, that kind of world order is something that takes care and tending, and democracy is something that is vulnerable at different times. We certainly see that in the relevance of some of the themes in the election back home. There are certainly issues when you look at the war in Ukraine and the war with Israel in Gaza. So all of that ties back to what D-Day means and why so many people and so many nations come back and want to mark this day because of its significance. And so you'll hear all of that from the president as he is here in France for an extended visit. In addition to the Normandy commemorations today, the president will go back to Normandy on Friday, separate from this sort of global commemoration, and deliver a specific address to the American people from a point where American Rangers had played out a particularly brave battle 80 years ago. And he will speak to those themes and the democracy and so forth on Friday. So really bringing those issues throughout this trip. And then this is also a state visit for the president in France, which is why I'm in Paris. That part of those events will unfold here in a couple of days, where Emmanuel Macron will host the president in the highest diplomatic forum, which is another sign of the deep and enduring bond. The U.S. and France, the oldest alliance for the United States, is the partnership with France, and that will play out here as well. Savannah, Joe?
We expect this program to get underway momentarily. Kelly, as you've noted here, the president's main priority today is to pay tribute to those amazing veterans who are on stage right now, while also delivering that message about freedom, about democracy, recognizing that right now back here in America there are competing visions about the U.S.'s role in the world. How does he plan to address those without making it feel too political?
In many ways, he can talk about the underpinnings of what happened 80 years ago, how it created organized institutions and partnerships that have endured through these years. And by simply talking about that historical storyline and citing its relevance today, people can hear it as a contemporary message as well. He doesn't need to bring in the politics of the moment. Implicit in what he will say is that these alliances matter. Institutions like NATO matter. Institutions like the United Nations, which formed these alliances after World War II, that those are persistent because there is a need. He will also meet with President Zelensky of Ukraine while in Normandy, and that is a very relevant contemporary touchstone for what's at stake. On the continent of Europe, aggression by Russia and a democratic state is fighting for its survival. So there are plenty of ways where history can tell a modern day story, and President Biden will certainly try to tap into that. And to remind people that these values, when you have decades of relative peace and security, that perhaps people forget what was at stake. We are now generations away from World War II. And so the president will try to, with these real people who have come a long distance, traveling at their advanced age to be here again, a very powerful symbol of what he is going to lay out. So it is something where the viewer, the listener, will interpret it, and certainly things like the president's campaign can reflect on it later. Other political actors in the national conversation can. But here it will be focused on a commander-in-chief moment for President Biden and a world leader moment. The president is particularly focused on the fact that the United States is an indispensable nation, an essential nation when these things come together. And you certainly see that in France, where there is this enduring gratitude for what the United States did to liberate France and to fight the Nazis back in World War II, along with the other powers of the alliance. So the president will speak of history, but there will be a modern message in it for sure. Joe?
Kelly, you touched on the time that the president has spent with some of these veterans. Of course, this day is so much about freedom and about democracy, but really so much about celebrating these heroes who have made this trip, who are still with us. We know they are being well taken care of. There's nurses, they have health care available to make this journey for them a safe one and hopefully an enjoyable one. Tell us a little bit more about the time that the president will be spending with these veterans who made the trip.
Well, certainly there are no more important dignitaries for this commemoration than the veterans themselves. In a world gathering like this, there is the King of England, the Prince of Wales, and there are certainly presidents and prime ministers and leaders from about 24 countries. But everyone seems focused on the veterans themselves, in part because it is so striking to see the young men of generations ago who are now older men. There's a fitness to them that they are well enough to be here, men and women, mostly men, of course, from the various branches. And there is a lot of care, a lot of respect, and there is personal time that the president has spent. Even when we were traveling to France, flying commercially, separate from the president, there were veterans on our flight, and there were all of those acknowledgments. Everyone boarding the flight, there was an honor guard as they boarded. There was applause for these veterans. It was remarkable to me. It was almost hard to believe that the veteran who was sitting across from me could in fact be from World War II. He did not look like he was old enough to have done that. And so there was a lot of people talking to them, hearing their stories. Many of them carry a photo of themselves taken in uniform at the time of their service in World War II. And it's just striking. They obviously have a remarkable life force to live into their 90s, some over 100. There was sad news that one of the veterans traveling here, who was expected to get acknowledgement today, passed away in the journey, passed away in Germany, 102 years old, on his way to France. So they are fragile. And all of the big commemorations of past U.S. presidents, going back to, Reagan and Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, who have come for these celebrations in the past, Barack Obama, that there were always groups of veterans, and that group is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And those who are here and are being greeted and are being celebrated certainly are a living reminder of what happened, and one that is a very precious symbol because of the march of time and all that they endured. So very much so, different than many kinds of presidential level events. These veterans are really the focus of what's happening here. And certainly stirring images, beautiful music, sweeping, glorious vistas at Normandy. What a beautiful place for something that was so difficult, so ugly in its moment, and yet so enduring in its importance. So all of that is what is being marked and noted and celebrated today. And this is a piece of history that's being written right now. One more chapter in the story of Normandy. Savannah, Joe?
The history continues. Kelly, will ask you to stand by. Jonathan Alter, I wanted to bring you back in here. We've been on the air for nearly 20 minutes now, looking at the faces of these veterans. As Kelly mentioned, some are in their hundreds, the rest in their upper 90s. We think of the lives they've lived, the heroics of that day, and how they've been telling this story for the last 80 years. What goes through your mind, Jonathan, when you see these faces and think of what these men have gone through?
Well, I have nothing but respect and reverence for what they did. They are, the youngest of them is 98. You had to be 18 to be in the armed forces. And the vast bulk of them are at least 100 years old. And it's a sign that through modern health, we've really been able to prolong life. And it's just so heartwarming to me that they can still bear witness. 10 years from now, there won't be anybody. And so the living connection to the past, so that those of us who are younger can have what's called a usable past, a way of connecting not just to their individual sacrifice, but to the larger ideas they were fighting. America was founded on an idea. This is what people too often don't really understand. And these men, even though they would, might say that they were fighting for their buddies, which is what my father and most other veterans would say if you ask them. They're fighting for their friends, many of whom died. They also all know that they were fighting for this larger idea. And when you think about that for a minute, that people would lay down their lives for an idea, it should make all of us take that idea of freedom and democracy and standing up to aggression and maintaining international alliances and having decent leadership, respects human beings. These are important ideas, and they're not very common in human history, which is more a history of might makes right than what Lincoln said, which is right makes might. And so these men understood that right makes might. And when a democracy is aroused, it can defend itself with a fierceness and bravery that can beat the most dictatorial of regimes. And I do think that thinking about a day like this reminds us not just of their sacrifice, but of their understanding of what is called the American idea.
Jonathan, you walked us through a little bit ago when we were talking just 15 minutes ago or so, really kind of giving us some imagery of the day and what these men went through on that beach, men and women, I should say. But seeing people, their friends, their fellow servicemen die right next to them, what do you think is going through their minds right now, being back there 80 years later? Many of them have probably made this journey before, taken this trip, been here for other anniversaries, but 80 years later, what do you think it's like to be at the site of this?
Well, my guess is that they will, after this ceremony, they will visit the very large cemetery nearby. You might remember it from the film Saving Private Ryan, which is the best film on D-Day. And they will, as my father did, they will weep, some of them, when they go and see the gravestones of their friends. It's 80 years, but it's still hard. So I just have such respect for, first of all, their ability to make this trip, to go across the ocean, and they're 100 years old. That gives you some indication of their sense of the importance of this moment.
Jonathan, we'll ask you to stand by for a moment. We want to bring in NBC News international correspondent Kelly Kobiea, who's also in Normandy, France. Kelly, we have listened to you share some extraordinary stories. You've had the honor of speaking with some of these veterans. What stands out in your mind, and what is going to be happening at the cemetery behind you as we mark this day?
Yeah, good morning to you, Joe and Savannah. Well, a couple of things. We've spoken to quite a few veterans over the past couple of days about their experiences here 80 years ago today. And what really struck me is that the memories are so clear. One of the veterans we spoke to said, yes, it was 80 years ago, but sometimes 80 years ago feels like yesterday, that something will happen and it will spark a memory and it will all come flooding back for them. And, some of the veterans who are here this year, they're here for the very first time. We spent some time with a man named Ben Miller, and he was one of the very few, only a few thousand, who landed here in Normandy on a glider. And these gliders were known as flying coffins at the time because they were so incredibly dangerous. They were unarmored and unarmed, and pilots did the best they could to actually land them safely, and many of these gliders did not land safely. They crashed. And we talked to Ben about his experience on that glider, being a 19-year-old young man, a medic. He said they weren't very well trained. They didn't really know what they were doing. They were doing their best to plug bullet holes and keep some of the paratroopers on the ground alive. And he talked about that day and landing in the paraglider. He said both of the wings broke off when they landed, and thankfully he and the rest of the medics got out alive. They said there was crossfire when they managed to climb out of the glider, and were able to hide themselves until it was safe enough to come back up and start to look for some of these injured paratroopers and help them. Just these incredibly vivid memories of what these men went through 80 years ago today. Another man, a bomber pilot named Floyd Blair, said that he remembers his orders from that morning. He remembers being told, look, if you get into a dogfight up in the air over the beaches of Normandy and you run out of ammunition, you stay there. You don't leave. You ram them. You ram the German pilots, the Luftwaffe. He said when they got up in the air that day, the Luftwaffe wasn't there. And he ended up being over the skies here in Normandy, over the beaches here in Normandy, and watching what was happening down below. And he said he remembers so clearly that the water was changing color, and he didn't quite make the connection when he was in the sky. But later, as he reflected on it, he realized that that was the blood of fellow soldiers, the people who weren't making it to shore, the many thousands who died that day trying to reach land and trying to help free this part of France and then go on to help liberate Europe. So it's these kinds of images, very vivid images of what it was like that day. And these veterans are coming back, not just to remember, certainly not to be honored. These men are incredibly humble and don't see themselves as heroes. They're coming back to sort of relive those moments and also pay respects to the men and women who didn't come back. This cemetery behind me, you see the headstones of some 9,000 fallen soldiers who weren't able to make it home. They were all very young, in their teens and early 20s. And that bomber pilot told me, and told pretty much everyone who would listen when he was here, that it was the people on the ground who were the brave ones. He said, I don't know how they managed to get up the courage to get on those beaches that day. Going forward, as we look at this anniversary, we will hear from President Biden, of course. We will see a ceremony from the French president, President Macron, awarding some of these veterans the highest honor in France, the French Legion of Honor. We will hear taps. We will hear readings of poems. And we will see a flyover of C-130s, as well as a flyover of F-35s in the missing man formation. So about a half-an-hour ceremony, a very somber ceremony. We've already seen a lot of the vets that we met being taken up to the stage area, each one very slowly being brought up to the stage. The crowds, I don't know if you can see much behind me, but there's a long line of crowds, members of the public who have come here, and they applauded when each one of those veterans was brought up to the stage. Just really touching moments. These men, the average age is 100. Most of them are either in their late 90s or over 100. This will be likely the last time they're able to come here, share those memories with other vets, a very, very small group, and be honored and say goodbye to the other soldiers who never made it home. Savannah, Joe.
Absolutely. Kelly, thank you so much for sharing those stories that you've heard from veterans over the last few days. It's so neat to hear those. We do expect this to get underway here in a few minutes as we near the top of the hour, 7 a.m. on the East Coast, nearly 1 p.m. in Normandy, France. Kelly, many people, probably most people listening, watching right now, might not get the chance to make the trip to Normandy, France. It's this place where, you know, we're seeing this beautiful commemoration. There is that cemetery behind you, this memorial to these heroes, but also a place where something, as we've been describing in detail this morning, something obviously horrible happened at the same place in terms of so many of these servicemen dying. What is it like to be there on the ground? Just tell us a little bit about Normandy and getting to be there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, this is hallowed ground, of course. One of the veterans told me it's a beautiful place, but it's also a very sad place for the reasons that I just described. When those veterans look at these crosses and Stars of David behind me, they think of their friends who they lost 80 years ago. Interestingly, when you leave this cemetery, most days it's open to the public and you see huge crowds behind me. People are able to walk through, take in the atmosphere, pay their respects, move on to the beaches and get an idea of what it must have been like on that day. But when you leave the cemetery, especially this time of year, the towns around this area are filled with World War II vehicles, with people in World War II garb, with American flags, big welcome signs, welcome liberators signs everywhere. And interestingly, especially if you're with one of these veterans, people are so eager to approach you, to approach them. They want to know their stories. They want to take their pictures. They really want to tell their stories and their memories from their families, perhaps, of what life was like when this part of the country was occupied by the Nazis and what it was like when it was liberated by the Americans. One woman, 98 years old, who lived through, obviously, the occupation and the liberation, said there's a very special bond between the people in this area and Americans. And I think if you visit here, even in a different time of year, you get that sense as well. It's not just during the D-Day commemoration week when you feel that big warm welcome. As an American tourist coming to this part of France, you feel the embrace. People are very, very welcoming and very appreciative and grateful for what the Americans did 80 years ago today. So it's an interesting part of France. It's a part of France that is never forgotten. Certainly, you know, I'm sure you could say that about all of this country, but here in particular, it's a place that is never forgotten. That day is never forgotten. Those stories, they tell them to their kids and their grandkids. You see little kids. Yesterday, we saw, day before, we saw a very young kid walking up to one of our veterans and saluting, brings tears to my eyes to think of it, saluting and saying, "Thank you for your service, sir." And he was probably 7, 8 years old. And that's not unusual. That's something that happened last year when we were here. You saw a lot of that last year, but it really is very touching when you see the way that Americans are welcomed here, and in particular, these surviving vets are welcomed.
Kelly, it's certainly fair to say that when you are in your hundreds, traveling from America to France is not an easy task, and yet 150 of these veterans have made the decision to do this. When you speak with them, why was it so important for them to be there on this day?
Yeah, you know, and a couple of them have waited all these 80 years to come, and some of those, you know, the reasons are family reasons, they're financial reasons. In some cases, they just didn't know that there was a way for them to come back and come back safely. As you said, much older now, and it's not easy to make a, 8 to 10 hour cross-Atlantic flight here to Normandy. And then once you get here, the days are long. And I think for some of them, it was just hard to
to come back. It was hard to face the memories. One of the veterans we spoke to, Dick Rung, who's been talking about his experiences over the past several years. He actually goes to schools and talks about his experiences here in Normandy. He was on one of the landing crafts on D-Day, and his boat, he said, was trying to reach shore to bring a couple of tanks to shore, and they kept having to go back out to sea and find another spot because the land was so hot. He said there was so much incoming fire from the Germans that they struggled to find a place to actually land. And he said that his brother was also serving here in France at the time, and his brother didn't talk about his experiences, and he wanted to talk to his brother about what they both went through, both very different experiences during World War II, and he just didn't want to. And I think that is the case for some of these men. They simply, the memories are really, really difficult for them. Even, you know, today, 80 years later, again, one of the men I talked to, Floyd Blair, the bomber pilot, it brought tears to his eyes. He got very emotional when he thought about flying above and seeing the water below and seeing thinking about all of the people who had died. So I think it's a really, really tough decision for them to make in the first place, to come here. It's a very brave decision for them to make, to come here, to face those memories, which are sometimes incredibly difficult to face, to think about the people who were standing and fighting alongside them who weren't able to come home. And I think some of them have told me that they do it because they're older now. It's a last chance. It's, you know, a couple of the guys said that, who had been here before, said they're not coming back again. This is it for them. They're worried now a little bit about their health. They've come here, they've seen what they need to see, they've dealt with the memories that they wanted to deal with, and now they're ready to put this to bed a little bit. I have to say that the vets we have been following come with this incredible organization called the Best Defense Foundation, and they really do go above and beyond to take care of these guys. They make sure that they're brought over here safely. Each man has a caregiver with him who spends all of their time with them, makes sure that he is healthy. They have a medical staff of 15, I think, to make sure all of the guys are well cared for, and if they're not feeling well, if they're not feeling up for one of these events, then they'll keep them back at the hotels. You know, it's an intense schedule. As I said, when these guys come here, they are the superstars, and there are lunches, there are commemorative events, there are trips to beaches, there are trips to battlefields. Everybody wants their time. So, you know, by the afternoon, they really do try to guard them a little bit, bring them back to their hotels, give them time to reflect on what they've seen and what they've experienced. But yeah, you know, I think for some of them, it's a difficult decision to make. Some of them deal with it much better. Others, it's a difficult decision to make, to come here and face those memories.
Kelly, it's wonderful to hear them described as superstars, just as they should be. For viewers who are joining us, we are just past the top of the hour now, just past 7 a.m. on the East Coast, 1 p.m. in Normandy, France. We came on the air early this morning as we are doing special coverage of the 80th anniversary of D-Day, the Allied invasion of Normandy, France. This morning, we are going to see a whole program. We will play that out for you. President Biden is there. He will be speaking shortly. Just on the right side of your screen there, you can see Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who has made the trip as well. We will also hear from the French president as we commemorate this, as about 150 veterans have made the trip. For many of them, as we just heard from Kelly Kobaya, if you've been with us, it may be the last time that they make this trip to Normandy, somewhere where they lost many of their friends, their fellow servicemen, and where they fought, of course, to eventually go on to liberate Europe. Kelly, apologies if we interrupt you as you answer this question in case the program does get underway, but walk us through a little bit of the TikTok this morning and what we are going to see as these celebrations, as this commemoration happens in Normandy, France today.
Yeah, so we'll see the arrival of the dignitaries first. We'll then see a flyover of C-130 transport planes, and then we'll start in the commemoration phase of this ceremony. We'll hear from President Biden, who is expected to talk about the victory of democracy over dictators, the symbolism of this moment 80 years later. As we stand in Europe with a war on Europe's eastern flank, the idea that so much was sacrificed here in Normandy and across Europe 80 years ago in the effort to defeat Hitler and Nazi Germany, and we will also, interestingly, see among those dignitaries the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, who was an invited guest here today. That's a kind of that gives you an idea of what we'll hear from the president. And we will also see President Macron of France awarding those veterans with the French Legion of Honor. There will be a reading from a military poem called The Watch, which is about a sailor on watch day and night. And we will also hear taps and then a flyover of F-35s. So, excuse me, in a lot of ways, a very symbolic ceremony. And at the center of it, of course, are these incredible World War II veterans. You can see people are still arriving here behind me. There are huge crowds all the way lined up behind the stage waiting to hear this ceremony as it gets ready to start. And this is not the only ceremony. There will also be an international commemoration on Omaha Beach and a couple of other commemorations throughout the day today. You know, from what we understand from our local producer here in France, this ground, this soil that we're standing on right now, this is actually American soil. This was a battlefield 80 years ago. It was a place where many, many men died. And after the war, the land was given by the French government to the American government so that the U.S. could bury their dead. And it is still American soil today. It's the reason that President Biden will be greeting President Macron and not the other way around, because where we're standing is hallowed ground for Americans. Once the ceremony here is over, that's pretty much it. Again, last year it was a little bit different. It wasn't as big of an anniversary. People were allowed to mill about afterwards. They were allowed to look at some of the grave sites here. The ceremony was cemetery was open to the public. I'm not sure if that's actually going to happen this year, but that gives you an idea of what we'll see during the ceremony.
Kelly, just the stories that the veterans have shared with you that you are now sharing with us, we are so incredibly grateful for those. Jonathan Alter, I want to bring you in here because in addition to the bravery of the veterans on stage there, on a day like today, I think often of leadership and how well known it was that General Eisenhower would not take credit for the successes of D-Day, but history tells us he was more than willing to take the blame if it had been a failure. It really was a different generation of leadership, wasn't it?
It was, but we do have echoes of that leadership in our politics today. They're just a little bit hard to find. So the loud voices of the public debate often drown out those who do appreciate accountability, responsibility, connection to the past. And I think that's what President Biden will talk about today, that keeping that connection to that earlier era of leadership. Now, they weren't perfect. You know, I wrote a book about Franklin Roosevelt. He wasn't perfect, but they did have a sense of the larger purpose. And I recommend to everyone that they read Dwight Eisenhower's letter that he did not issue. It was a letter that he prepared before D-Day if the invasion had failed. And in that letter, which he would have issued publicly, he takes full responsibility for the defeat. Now, fortunately, he never had to send that letter, make that statement. But I do think it lives on as a, an important reminder that we do need to take responsibility and be accountable for whatever they decide.
Jonathan, it does sound like the program might be getting underway. We see Secretary Austin standing on his feet. Once the official party is entered, we do expect a C-130 flyover, which will begin the moments and the festivities we will see here. President Emmanuel Macron will be speaking. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will be speaking, along with President Biden. There will be a 21-gun salute, and then it will conclude with an F-35 flyover, including that missing man formation that Kelly Cobier was describing moments ago. Let's take a moment and listen in.
June 6, 1944, D-Day. France has been occupied by Nazi Germany for almost 4 years. Some countries have suffered under their sinister yoke even longer. Unfathomable crimes were committed against whole peoples. But the burdens of nations can only be lifted by the efforts of individuals. Early that morning, Lieutenant John Spaulding, a 29-year-old sports writer from Owensboro, Kentucky, assisted by 25-year-old Sergeant Philip Strachik, a truck driver from New Jersey, commanded 32 men in E Company, 16th Infantry, as part of the first wave onto Omaha Beach, where more than 2,400 men would be killed or wounded that same day. Navigating rough waters, they took on machine gun, mortar, and artillery fire, but were able to make it out of the water and across the beach, bypassing a German machine gun emplacement 100 yards to their left that was mercilessly cutting down men from F Company. Their radio not working and cut off from the rest of E Company, Lieutenant Spaulding and Sergeant Strachik led their platoon to the base of the bluff behind the cover of a demolished building. Pinned down by gunners from above, they took stock of their situation. We could still see no one to the right, Lieutenant Spaulding said. We didn't know what had become of the rest of E Company. Back in the water, boats were in flame. I saw a tank ashore knocked out. After a couple of looks back, we decided we wouldn't look back anymore. Taking relentless fire from above, avoiding landmines underfoot, Lieutenant Spaulding, Sergeant Strachik, and their men pushed upward. They reached the top and overran the machine gun nest, opening a path for the men below to follow. Fighting onward, they continued along the bluff, attacking enemy fortifications from the rear, clearing trenches and pillboxes, and taking prisoners. Lieutenant Spaulding, Sergeant Stretchick, and the rest of their platoon secured a pathway for the thousands of men bottled up on the beach behind them. The advance could now continue. But military prowess and tactical skill like this were only part of what propelled America's sons to the top of that bluff and beyond. There was something more. In the words of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, they had embarked on a great crusade, and the hope and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere marched with them. That great crusade would eventually free the tyrannized peoples of Europe and help save the world as we know it. And it all began right here on June 6th, 1944.
Distinguished guests, please rise, if you are able, for the arrival of the official party.
Chers invités, veuillez vous lever si vous le pouvez pour l'arrivée de la délégation officielle.
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States of America and Dr. Biden, accompanied by the President of the French Republic, Mrs. Macron.
Chers invités, le Président des États-Unis d'Amérique et la Dr. Biden, accompagnés du Président de la République française et de Madame Macron.
Distinguished guests, please remain standing for the national anthem of the French Republic, followed by the national anthem of the United States of America.
Chers invités, veuillez rester debout pour l'hymne national de la République française, suivi de l'hymne national des États-Unis d'Amérique.
Distinguished guests, please remain standing for the invocation delivered by Chaplain Karen Meeker.
Chers invités, veuillez rester debout pour l'invocation prononcée par l'aumônière Karen Meeker.
Let us bow our heads in humble reverence and solemn remembrance. Let us pray. God, when you needed someone to defend freedom, you made a soldier. When you needed someone to fight tyranny, you created a Marine. When you needed someone to protect the skies, you made an airman. When you needed someone to guard the seas, you made the sailor. And to patrol the shores, the Coast Guard. When you needed to send someone brave and true, it has always been and always will be the men and women of the armed forces. When the world needed heroes, you called the greatest generation to courage, and their answer still echoes in the soul of the nation. Shine your eternal light upon those whose gravestones encircle us as silent sentinels, reminding us of the price of liberty. Comfort with your abiding presence those who mourn empty tables and empty chairs, of those who gave their best hopes for our brighter tomorrows. Be our witness, O God, as we stand on this hallowed ground, consecrated in blood, that we will be devoted to the preservation of peace with the same determination as these here who fought fourscore years ago. As storm clouds gather on the horizon once again, rise up, O God, the next greatest generation, to meet every challenge with an unbreakable resolve to do what is right and good in your sight, not counting the cost, but weighing the unfinished work of freedom, a vision where all people can pursue the life to which you have created them. May it be so, I pray, in your holy name. Amen and amen.
Distinguished guests, please take your seats.
Chers invités, veuillez prendre place.
Please welcome the Secretary of the American Battle Monuments Commission, Charles K. DeJude.
Veuillez accueillir le secrétaire de la Commission américaine des monuments de guerre, Charles K. DeJude.
Thank you. President and First Lady Biden, President and Madame Macron, ladies and gentlemen, Welcome to the American Battle Monuments Commission, Normandy American Cemetery. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue. D-Day is the hinge of history. It is here we reflect the very best of America's values. When America sends its young, its brave, its finest, we do not send them to fight for a king or a crown. We do not fight for a sect or a denomination. We do not fight for a motherland or a fatherland. No, and we never, ever fight for conquest or plunder or enslavement of another people. When America is at its best, America sends its young, its brave, its finest to fight for simple, humble values. The values of freedom, liberty, and democracy. And when the job is done, when the mission is accomplished, when the tyrant is taken down and democracy is stood up, America does something unique in the history of mankind. We go home. All that America asks for in return for the sacrifice of our young, our brave, and our finest are a few small plots of land to bury our dead. All of you are seated here in one of those small plots of land. That is why this date, June 6th, this place, Normandy, and this ceremony here is so important. It is a reminder to all of us of the true cost of war and the real price of freedom. It is a price that we paid on D-Day 80 years ago. It is a price that we remind all authoritarian dictators today that if necessary, we will pay that price again to ensure the success of freedom. And that is ultimately why France knows, the United States knows, and we know. La France connaît, et les États-Unis connaissent, et nous connaissons that the world's most powerful weapon system is not a T-72 manned by mercenaries. It is not a Fujian aircraft carrier patrolling artificial islands. It is not a suicide terrorist killing and slaughtering innocents. No. The world's most powerful weapon system was, is, and shall forever be a free people willing to fight for freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming here. Thank you for remembering here. Thank you for renewing your faith in freedom. Je vous dis merci beaucoup. May God bless each and every one of you, France and the United States of America.
Distinguished guests, the President of the French Republic, Emmanuel Macron.
Chers invités, le président de la République française, Emmanuel Macron.
Monsieur le Président des États-Unis, cher Joe Biden, Madame la Première Dame, Dr. Jill Biden, Mesdames et Messieurs, en vos grades et qualités, Messieurs les combattants du débarquement, chers vétérans, Mesdames et Messieurs, ces humbles tombes blanches qui sont juste là, à portée de main derrière vous, sont un des lieux les plus émouvants de France. On y sent vibrer l'histoire, l'héroïsme des morts et celui des vivants. On y lit la grandeur d'un peuple prêt à mourir sur un sol qui n'est pas le sien, pour une cause qui est la sienne. Il est un sanctuaire où se transmet comme un flambeau la mémoire inlassable du jour J. Car ici est le lien séculaire entre nos deux nations, nos deux républiques qui se renouvellent et s'affirment. Un lien de sang versé pour la liberté. Ce lieu comme cette cérémonie disent notre dette à l'égard de ceux qui sont tombés, comme de ceux qui ont survécu. Et vous voilà, aujourd'hui, à nos côtés. À l'été 1944, vous aviez 20 ans à peine, parfois moins. Vous aviez une famille, des amis, une fiancée, une femme, parfois des enfants. Vous aviez des rêves, des projets, un avenir. Et vous avez tout quitté, franchi l'océan et débarqué sur les côtes de France, il y a 8 décennies de cela. Vous avez tout quitté et pris tous les risques pour notre indépendance, pour notre liberté. Cela, nous ne l'oublions pas. Merci. Vous êtes venu ici et vous avez rejoint notre guerre pour y faire basculer l'histoire. Oui. Vous êtes venu ici, Mr. Hilbert Margol, débarqué à Marseille en janvier 1945, remontant l'Europe de la Provence à la Pologne, jusqu'à ce jour dramatique où, avec votre frère jumeau Howard, vous avez découvert les charniers de Dachau. Vous êtes venu ici, Mr. John Wardle, fantassin auquel votre courage a valu une blessure à Hürtgenwald, en Allemagne, en pleine bataille. Vous êtes venu ici, Mr. Robert Pedigo.
You are watching a ceremony commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a powerful moment that includes the French President Emmanuel Macron, who's speaking now. President Joe Biden will be speaking after him. Jonathan Alter, NBC News contributor, has been watching everything with us this morning. Jonathan, what's going through your mind as this commemoration now is underway?
Well, you know, I keep harking back to this very fine speech that we just heard before President Macron from the head of the Battlefield Commission. And he used one sentence that, for me, sums it all up. We go home. What he meant was when the Allies go to liberate a country and protect that country from the forces of despotism and authoritarianism, we don't stay. You know, we've made mistakes in our foreign policy, but we go home. We are not there to conquer another land and make it part of the United States. We were not there in 1944 to make France our own. We were there to liberate France. And there's a huge difference. And that points to the difference that he pointed to between us and Russia. Putin wants to make Ukraine part of Russia. We did not want to make France part of the United States. And he also pointed out, I thought, quite brilliantly, that a suicide bomber or a Russian tank, or you mentioned Chinese weapons patrolling islands in the South China Sea. These weapons are nothing compared to people fighting for freedom. And that really is one of the real lessons of D-Day, is that when aroused, democracies can be extraordinarily impressive fighting forces and overcome very, very stiff opposition from enemy forces. So, and I also think that the other thing that strikes me about President Macron speaking now is the length of the Franco-American relationship. Remember that Lafayette came over when we were fighting for freedom initially, and then we returned the favor many generations later. So this seals that.
Let's listen in now a little bit more to the French president as he speaks English.
Vous êtes venu ici. Alors vous voilà à jamais chez vous.
And
sur le
Jonathan,
sol
he's
de
actually
France.
speaking French once again. We just want to make sure we continue to bring our viewers information here. Jonathan, you just very smartly pointed out those comments from the Secretary of the American Battle Monuments Commission that we heard about this morning. Just prior to that, we heard the French national anthem followed by the U.S. national anthem. Of course, we saw our president walk in just alongside the French president who's speaking now. Talk about the relationship between these two countries that was formed and forever forged on this day, on D-Day.
Yeah, so the relationship really goes back to the founding of our republic, when we were fighting for our independence from Great Britain, and the French helped us. General Lafayette helped us get our freedom initially. And in all the years after that, we continued, for the most part, to have good relations with France. We fought on France's side in World War I. And then after Hitler conquered France in 1940, we organized to liberate France. And I think sometimes, because of various cultural differences, people don't appreciate just how close this Franco-American relationship has been over the years.
Jonathan, thank you again for your expertise. Let's listen in here for a moment.
Va maintenant présenter l'Ordre national de la Légion d'honneur. Créée en 1802 par Napoléon Bonaparte, la Légion d'honneur est la plus haute décoration française et récompense les services éminents rendus à la République française. Cette distinction décernée à ces vétérans américains reconnaît leur service et leur participation à la libération.
If you've been watching here in the audience, you may have caught glimpses of Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks, and so many others who are there to commemorate this moment. Let's listen in here as we believe the French Legion is about to be given by French President Macron.
Monsieur Hilbert Margol, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur John Wardle, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur.
Thank you very much.
No, he wants to stay. He wants to stand. Monsieur Robert Pelligot, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Calvin China, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Edward Berthold, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Dominique Critelli, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Bill Casassa, Au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Victor Channing, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Raymond Landsberg, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Richard Stewart, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur John Kenyon, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin III, Secretary of Defense of the United States of America.
Chers invités, veuillez accueillir l'honorable Lloyd J. Austin, troisième du nom, secrétaire à la défense des États-Unis d'Amérique.
President Biden, Dr. Biden, President Macron, Mrs. Macron, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and above all, the veterans of World War II. I am honored to stand again at this hallowed place. We bow our heads to remember the more than 9,000 U.S. and Allied soldiers killed or wounded on D-Day by Hitler's forces. On behalf of the United States Department of Defense, I am here to give thanks, inadequate as that word may be. 80 years later, we thank the young Americans who took the beaches, who helped liberate France, and who helped free this continent from Nazi tyranny. We thank every Allied warrior who fought for freedom on June 6, 1944. And we thank the American and Allied veterans who have rallied once more on the shores of Normandy. Victors of D-Day, we are humbled by your presence. The young Americans who fought through the clamor and the chaos on D-Day have grown old or left us. And whenever a veteran of D-Day is gathered to his maker, in the fullness of time, after a long life lived in freedom, he wins a final victory over Hitler. You helped defeat what Churchill called a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalog of human crime. And you laid the foundation for a more just, free, and decent world. Together with our allies, we built peace out of war, a hard-headed peace, a peace renewed by constant commitment, a peace forged by the generation that won the bloodiest war in human history. And so our gratitude must never fade. Our memories must never dim, and our resolve must never fail. We still seek a world where aggression is a sin, and where human rights are sacred, and where all people can live in freedom. And so we must rally again to defend the open, post-war world of rules, rights, and responsibilities. Those rules protect us. Those rights define us. And those responsibilities summon us once more. At this hinge in history, we must again stand firm against aggression and tyranny. And as I said here last year, if the troops of the world's democracies could risk their lives for freedom then, surely the citizens of the world's democracy can risk our comfort for freedom now. So let us again uphold the spirit of D-Day. Let us again defend the principles that the Allied armies carried. And let us again thank the heroes of D-Day who kept freedom alive for us all. You saved the world. You saved the world, and we must only defend it. Gentlemen, we salute you. May God bless the American and Allied troops who fought here. May God bless the United States of America, and may God bless all who cherish human freedom. Thank you.
Papa, what was it like on D-Day?
Was the beginning.
It was a very decisive battle for us because our mission was to establish ourselves on the beach.
When we were on that boat, on that Higgins boat, everybody talked about the same thing, helping each other and not getting killed.
We started up this sandy area, and we're hundreds of men inside.
My father jumped about 1:30 in the morning on June 6th. The plane was too low, it was too fast, the fire coming up was so thick, it was like you could walk on it.
It wasn't something that we had ever seen before in all of our training.
I always have said that it was the power of my mother's prayers that saved me that day.
And it gets to me thinking about it. But as I look over those crosses, I see people standing up, even waving. I have to go back because there's something there that draws you back.
I have a very close friend that I knew by the name of Edward Milosevic. He had received a very bad stomach wound, and I could not even bandage it properly. We said goodbye to each other forever. He's laying here on the cemetery here in Colville. I think of the many men here that paid the ultimate price for the freedom of Europe.
Young people want to know and need to know. Everybody I saw that I was glad to fight alongside them, they were willing to stand up. And not all of them came back.
And they all have a story to tell. And it's our responsibility to tell those stories. People will not be forgotten as long as we keep talking about them.
I am not a hero. I just did my job. The real heroes are laying here on the cemeteries. These are our heroes. And we should never forget them.
Distinguished guests, the 46th President of the United States of America, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
Invité d'honneur, le 46e Président des États-Unis d'Amérique, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
The hour had nearly come. Monday, June 5th, 1944. The evil, pitiless Third Reich was devastating the world. Nazi Germany had subjugated the once free nations of Europe through brute force, lies, and twisted ideology of racial superiority. Millions of Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Millions of others killed by bombs, bullets, bloody warfare. Hitler and those with him thought democracies were weak, that the future belonged to dictators. Here, on the coast of Normandy, the battle between freedom and tyranny would be joined. Here, on that June morning, the testing was at hand. President Macron, Mrs. Macron, Secretary Austin, Secretary Blinken, distinguished guests, most of all, our honored veterans who met that test at the ages, the test of ages to that moment, 80 years ago today. On behalf of the American people and as Commander-in-Chief, it's the highest honor to be able to salute you here in Normandy once more. All of you, God love you. Winston Churchill called what happened here, quote, the greatest, most complicated operation ever, end of quote. After years of planning, Operation Overlord was ready to launch just as soon as the weather turned. Across the choppy English Channel, the Supreme Commander of the Allies, Dwight D. Eisenhower, waited. The largest force ever of its kind, built by 12 nations. Men, guns, planes, naval craft of every description, waited. The world, captive and free, waited. Finally, Eisenhower's forecasters said there was a window in the weather. It would open briefly on Tuesday, the 6th of June. The general weighed the options and gave the order. At dawn, the Allies would strike. The Great Crusade to free Europe from tyranny would begin. That night, General Eisenhower drove to the English town of Newbury to visit paratroopers of the 101st Airborne. There were men from all over America. It was estimated that 80% of them would be killed within hours. That was the estimate. But they were brave, they were resolute, and they were ready. One soldier told General Eisenhower, quote, don't worry, sir. The 101st is on the job. Everything will be taken care of. That's what he said. And because of their courage and their resolve, because the courage and resolve of their allies, it was taken care of. From the sea and sky, nearly 160,000 Allied troops descended on Normandy. Many, to state the obvious, never came home. Many survived that longest day, kept on fighting for months until victory was finally won. And a few, a notable band of brothers, are here with us today. Kenneth Blaine Smith is here. On that day, under heavy artillery fire, he operated a rangefinder and radar on the first American ship to arrive at Normandy's coast, providing direct gunfire support for the Rangers scaling the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc on their daring mission to take out the German batteries. Bob Gibson is here. He landed on Utah Beach about 10 hours after the invasion began. Bullets flying everywhere, tracers lighting up the sky. Bob drove an M4 tractor with anti-aircraft gun mounted on top, providing critical protection for the infantry against the German Air Force. On that day, and for many days after, he continued. Ben Miller is here, a medic with the 82nd Airborne. At 3 a.m. on June 6th, he and 13 other medics flew over the channel in a rickety glider. Its wings were ripped off by giant poles that the Germans buried halfway in the ground to stop them from landing. They crashed, but they survived. And they did their duty, dragging injured soldiers to safety, treating wounds, saving lives while the battle raged. Every soldier who stormed the beach, who dropped by parachute or landed by glider, every sailor who manned the thousands of ships and landing craft, every aviator who destroyed German-controlled airfields, bridges, and railroads, all were backed by other brave Americans, including hundreds of thousands of people of color and women who courageously served despite unjust limitations on what they could do for their nation. Lewis Brown is here, part of the Red Ball Express, a truck convoy made up of mostly African-American drivers. They landed in Normandy in the wake of D-Day. They rushed supplies to the rapidly advancing front lines. Woody Woodhouse is here, members of the legendary Tuskegee Airmen, who flew over 15,000 sorties during the war. Marjorie Stone is here. She enlisted in the women's branch of the Naval Reserve, became an aircraft mechanic, spent the war keeping American planes and pilots in the air. Theirs has always been the story of America. Just walk the rows of this cemetery as I have. Nearly 10,000 heroes buried side by side, officers and enlisted, immigrants and native-born, different races, different faiths, but all Americans. All served with honor when America and the world needed them most. Millions back home did their part as well. From coast to coast, Americans found countless ways to pitch in. They understood our democracy is only as strong as all of us make it together. The men who fought here became heroes, not because they were the strongest or toughest or most fiercest, although they were, but because they were given an audacious mission, knowing, every one of them knew, the probability of dying was real. But they did it anyway. They knew, beyond any doubt, there are things that are worth fighting and dying for. Freedom is worth it. Democracy is worth it. America is worth it. The world is worth it. Then, now, and always. The war in Europe didn't end for another 11 months. But here, the tide turned in our favor. Here, we proved the forces of liberty are stronger than the forces of conquest. Here, we proved that the ideals of our democracy are stronger than any army or combination of armies in the entire world. We proved something else here as well, the unbreakable unity of the Allies. Here with us are men who served alongside the Americans that day, wearing different flags on their arms, but fighting with the same courage for the same purpose. What the Allies did together 80 years ago far surpassed anything we could have done on our own. It was a powerful illustration of how alliances, real alliances, make us stronger. A lesson that I pray we Americans never forget. Together we won the war. We rebuilt Europe, including our former enemies. It was an investment in what became shared and a prosperous future. We established NATO, the greatest military alliance in the history of the world. And over time, you got it, it is. And over time, we brought more nations into NATO, the NATO alliance, including the newest members, Finland and Sweden. Today, NATO stands at 32 countries strong, and NATO is more united than ever, and even more prepared to keep the peace, deter aggression, defend freedom all around the world. America has invested in our alliances and forged new ones, not simply out of altruism, but out of our own self-interest as well. America's unique ability to bring countries together is an undeniable source of our strength and our power. Isolationism was not the answer 80 years ago and is not the answer today. We know the dark forces that these heroes fought against 80 years ago. They never fade. Aggression and greed, the desire to dominate and control, to change borders by force, these are perennial. The struggle between a dictatorship and freedom is unending. Here in Europe, we see one stark example. Ukraine has been invaded by a tyrant bent on domination. Ukrainians are fighting with extraordinary courage, suffering great losses, but never backing down. They've been inflicted on the Russian aggressors. They've suffered tremendous losses, Russia. The numbers are staggering. 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded. Nearly 1 million people have left Russia because they can no longer see a future in Russia. The United States and NATO and a coalition of more than 50 countries standing strong with Ukraine. We will not walk away. Because if we do, Ukraine will be subjugated, and it will not end there. Ukraine's neighbors will be threatened. All of Europe will be threatened. And make no mistake, the autocrats of the world are watching closely to see what happens in Ukraine, to see if we let this illegal aggression go unchecked. We cannot let that happen. To surrender to bullies, to bow down to dictators is simply unthinkable. Were we to do that, it means we'd be forgetting what happened here in these hallowed beaches. Make no mistake, we will not bow down. We will not forget. Let me end with this. History tells us freedom is not free. If you want to know the price of freedom, come here to Normandy. Come to Normandy and look. Go to the other cemeteries in Europe where our fallen heroes rest. Go back home to Arlington Cemetery. Tomorrow, I will pay respects at Pointe du Hoc. Go there as well and remember, the price of unchecked tyranny is the blood of the young and the brave. In their generation, in their hour of trial, the Allied forces of D-Day did their duty. Now the question for us is, in our hour of trial, will we do ours? We're living in a time when democracy is more at risk across the world than any point since the end of World War II, since these beaches were stormed in 1944. Now we have to ask ourselves, will we stand against tyranny, against evil, against crushing brutality of the iron fist? Will we stand for freedom? Will we defend democracy? Will we stand together? My answer is yes, and only can be yes. We're not far off from the time when the last living voices, those who fought and bled on D-Day, will no longer be with us. So we have a special obligation. We cannot let what happened here be lost in the silence of the years to come. We must remember it, must honor it, and live it. And we must remember the fact that they were heroes here that day does not absolve us from what we have to do today. Democracy is never guaranteed. Every generation must preserve it, defend it, and fight for it. That's the test of the ages. In memory of those who fought here, died here, literally saved the world here, let us be worthy of their sacrifice. Let us be the generation that when history is written about our time, in 10, 20, 30, 50, 80 years from now, it'll be said, when the moment came, we met the moment. We stood strong. Our alliances were made stronger. We saved democracy in our time as well. Thank you very much, and may God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, in honor of the veterans gathered with us today and those commemorated at this hallowed ground, Lieutenant Commander Catherine Miyamasu will now read the watch.
Chers invités, en l'honneur des vétérans réunis avec nous aujourd'hui et de ceux qui sont commémorés dans ce lieu sacré, la capitaine de corvette Catherine Miyamasu va maintenant lire The Watch, la garde.
Detail! Attention! Center! Face!
When a sailor retires, it is traditional that a younger service member read the watch. Today, we want to read the watch for all World War II veterans here today, both behind us and all around us. 80 years ago, these sailors stood the watch. While some of us were in our bunks at night, these soldiers stood the watch. While some of us were in school learning our trade, Marines, airmen, and coasties stood the watch. Yes, even before some of us were born into this world. The men behind me and their brothers and sisters who lay before me stood the watch. In those years, when the storm clouds of war were seen brewing on the horizon of history, they stood the watch. Many times, they would cast an eye ashore and see family standing there, needing guidance and help, needing that hand to hold in those hard times. But still, they stood the watch. They stood the watch 80 years ago. They stood the watch so that we, our families, and our fellow countrymen and women can sleep soundly in safety each and every night, knowing that these veterans stood the watch. Today, we are here to say, World War II veterans, the watch stands relieved. Relieved by those you have trained, guided, and led. American World War II veterans, you stand relieved. We have the watch.
Free, all!
Distinguished guests, please rise if you are able, as we salute those memorialized here at Normandy American Cemetery, and remain standing for the playing of La Sonnerie au Mort and taps, and the departure of the official party.
Chers invités, veuillez vous lever si vous le pouvez pour saluer ceux qui sont commémorés ici au cimetière américain de Normandie et rester debout pour l'interprétation de la sonnerie aux morts et de taps et pour le départ de la délégation officielle.
21-gun salute, followed by an F-35 flyover in the missing man formation. A powerful, poignant close to this ceremony. You've been watching our live coverage of the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion.
There is much more to come, though, on this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us. We will be right back.
We're back now with the latest developments in the case surrounding the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. In a new interview, the mother of one of the victims, Stacy Chapin, is now speaking out about her son Ethan and sharing why she plans to skip the trial. Here's NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky.
Yeah, before this case can even go to trial, the defense is going to try to have it moved outside of Latah County, Idaho. And the hearing for that just got pushed back 2 more months from June until August. Now, in a new podcast, the mother of Ethan Chapin, Stacy, is addressing those ongoing delays, the nightmare that devastated her family, and how each of them have found the strength to press on.
You know, we're a regular family. I mean, kids played soccer and sports, and then all of a sudden we were the top news story in the nation.
Stacy Chapin opening up in her first podcast appearance, hosted by actor Taylor Lautner and his wife, Taylor.
We really only had 2 choices, and one was to just literally curl up and call it a day, which isn't an option, or we're going to start putting the pieces back together.
It's been more than a year and a half since Stacy's son Ethan Chapin, along with Xander Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonzalez, were fatally stabbed in their home near the University of Idaho campus. Suspect Brian Koberger was arrested 6 weeks later. A judge entered a not guilty plea on Koberger's behalf. The victims' families, though, still awaiting a trial date.
This rape, we may never get to trial.
Amid a deluge of pretrial motions and hearings.
Will you attend the trial when it finally happens?
No.
Will anyone from your family?
I don't think so.
Chapin first explaining that decision to Savannah on Today last year.
It doesn't change the outcome. It just is energy that doesn't feel like it's well spent. You know, there's other places to put it.
Now telling podcast The Squeeze, the family's at peace with the pace of the proceedings.
Nothing changes the outcome. We cannot bring Ethan back.
The family of another victim, Kaylee Gonzalez, voicing frustration with ongoing delays through an attorney.
The families need something to look forward to. They need something to happen in the cases rather than just hearing motions all day long, every day of every month.
Meanwhile, Chapin says the social media frenzy surrounding the case has taken a toll.
The true crime nation is shocking. But at the heart of every true crime situation is a family like mine.
The Chapin family focusing on honoring Ethan's memory every day.
I mean, we have said, you just have to get up and be the best version of you.
Now, as for this delay in the hearing being pushed back from June until August, one of the contributing factors here is defense attorneys saying that they cannot get a fair trial in Latah County. Prosecutors pushing back on that, saying that this is a nationally known case now. Therefore, the location of where the trial takes place, less important here. Guys?
All right, Morgan, thank you.
Let's get you some international news now. Slovakia's prime minister just made his first public comments since an assassination attempt last month.
NBC's Claudio Lavaga joined us from Rome with that and other world headlines. Claudio, good morning.
Joseph, and good morning. That's right. In a recorded video message posted on his social media accounts, Robert Fico, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, has blamed the opposition for his assassination attempt about 3 weeks ago. Now, on May 15th, Fico was shot several times in the town of Handlova in central Slovakia and had several surgeries before he was released from hospital on May 30th. In the video, Fico said the gunman was an activist of the Slovak opposition who tried to murder him because of his political views. Opposition parties in Slovakia have denied any connection with the shooting. Let's go to Mexico now, where on Wednesday, the World Health Organization confirmed the first ever fatal case of a new subtype of bird flu. The WHO says the victim is a 59-year-old man with no history of exposure to poultry and other animals. Test results revealed he was infected with bird flu subtype H5N2, which has never been documented in humans before. The new strain of this bird flu is different from the one that has infected 3 dairy workers in the United States. And let's end this tour of the world in Paris, where 17-year-old Mira Andreeva reached the French Open semifinals. The unseeded Russian player is the youngest Grand Slam semifinalist in more than a quarter century. What makes this even more impressive is that Andreeva reached the semifinals by beating the number 2 in the world, Aryna Sabalenka. She said her secret is that even if she and her coach have a game plan, in the end, she does whatever she wants on the field. Later today, she plays Italian Jasmine Paolini for a shot at the final. Of course, I'm not going to take sides here, so may the best win.
Always impartial.
Yes, right. Claudio, thank you so much.
Coming up, the battle over reproductive rights heating up on Capitol Hill this morning.
After the break, the future of a new piece of legislation on contraceptives after it was blocked by Senate Republicans. That's up next.
We're back now with the battle over reproductive rights on Capitol Hill.
In the Senate, Republicans blocked a Democratic-led measure that aimed to enshrine the federal right to contraception. It happened the same day House Republicans approved a controversial veterans funding bill that includes a provision to limit abortion access for veterans and their beneficiaries.
NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now. Julie, good morning. So let's start with the Senate. Republicans voted to block the bill that would not only give nationwide rights for individuals to obtain and use contraceptives, but also protect the health care workers who offer it. So why the vote fail? Is this all for this legislation?
Well, that's not all for this legislation, because Majority Leader Schumer in the Senate, the Democratic leader, of course, vowed to bring it up again and again. But that doesn't mean it's actually going to go anywhere, guys. The reason that this failed is because Republicans overwhelmingly think that Democrats are just trying to use this as a messaging tool ahead of the election in November. That said, though, you did have 2 Republican senators, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, who did vote in favor of this because they told us that if this is a messaging bill, their message is they want to protect contraceptives for women, that access guaranteed throughout the country. Another reason for this is because Republicans simply did not want to prolong this process. They didn't want to open the door for Democrats to be able to squeeze them any more on this issue. Though Schumer and Democrats are going to bring up other reproductive rights bills, including next week, with a vote on IVF, guys.
Let's talk about that veterans funding bill. What does that mean for reproductive health care for veterans, and how are Democrats responding to that?
Well, this is the same move that Republicans tried last year unsuccessfully. Basically, what this would do is it's a military construction family housing bill. This would give millions in funding to the VA, Veterans Affairs Department. And so what Republicans are saying now is that the VA, the DOD, should not be allowed to provide any kind of abortion counseling to veterans, to service members, and in some cases, not provide the procedure altogether. This is something that was new. The Department of Defense sort of created this program with the Biden administration after the Supreme Court overturned Dobbs, overturned the right to an abortion throughout the country. Democrats, though, that I spoke to yesterday, vowing to fight this, and this is going to come ahead all in a showdown ahead of that September 30th deadline to fund the government. But you can be sure that to get bipartisan support, Democrats are going to ensure that that is taken out of this.
Yeah, clearly Democrats see abortion as a winning issue for this year's election. So how does all this set the stage for not just the November election, but also, as you mentioned, the deadline to fund the government at the end of September?
Well, in the words of Senator Joni Ernst, the Republican who tried to pass her version of the contraceptives bill yesterday, she said that the only winning issue that Democrats have is abortion. Now, Democrats, of course, would argue, they would say they have the economy and other things as well. But nonetheless, they certainly acknowledge that abortion rights, reproductive rights, is such a driving issue to the polls. And that is why Democrats had planned a series of votes in the Senate. Again, contraception is one of them. IVF is another. We'll see if they plan other votes, especially ahead of the anniversary of the Supreme Court overturning Roe and Dobbs at the end of this month. But certainly you're going to keep seeing Democrats trying to go on offense on this issue and trying to trap Republicans because this issue, of course, is extremely unpopular, especially for those vulnerable swing district, swing state Republicans who are trying to get reelected in November.
All right, Julie Sirkin, thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Well, some public health officials want to see warning labels on foods with high amounts of sugar. You know, like the warning you'd see about tobacco on a pack of cigarettes. They argue it would spell out the harmful effects of sugar on our health. NBC News Now anchor Vicki Wynn has more.
A chocolate river.
That's the most fantastic thing I've ever seen.
Americans have a sweet tooth. On average, we eat more than 100 pounds of sugar per person each year. That's more than 3 times the recommended amount by the Food and Drug Administration. And it's not just candy, snacks, and soda. Hidden sugars in things like processed food, cereal, salad dressing, and even yogurt are adding to our sugar intake. And in a recent Time magazine article, Dr. Mark Hyman says it's time to treat sugar like cigarettes. Is sugar the new tobacco?
Sugar for sure is the new tobacco.
He's leading a movement to take the mystery out of what we eat by clearly labeling sugar on the front of food packaging.
We see rising rates of diabetes, of heart disease, of cancer, dementia, all linked to a higher consumption of sugar. And these are crippling America.
Do you think putting something as simple as a label on the front is going to change the way consumers eat?
Absolutely. I think people make choices based on what's on the label. They buy low-fat foods. They buy, high-fiber foods.
Data shows those labels are having an impact. A study looking at 2,300 families' food and drink purchases found that overall calories bought from products required to have warnings dropped by 23%. Overall sugar bought from those foods decreased by 26%. In New York City, as part of the city's Sweet Truth Act, a new rule would require food chains and coffee shops with 15 or more stores in the U.S. to use a warning icon to let consumers know eating too many added sugars can contribute to type 2 diabetes and weight gain. The labels would be mandatory on menu boards and packages for food and drinks with more than 50 grams of added sugar.
This allows New Yorkers to make informed decisions about their health.
And though a growing number of state laws are limiting local government control over food and nutrition, the Big Apple is just the latest to crack down on the sweet stuff. Several cities across the country have implemented sugary beverage taxes. A recent study found purchases declined dramatically in 5 of those cities because of it. And the USDA announced new nutrition guidelines for school meals that include plans to reduce sugar. Food industry groups say labels like the ones New York City will see could demonize certain food products or confuse consumers, and that existing nutrition labels provide enough information for people to make healthy choices.
People have to have choice, they have to know what they're eating, and they have to be clear. And I think Americans should have the right to choose what's good or bad for them.
All right, thanks to Vicki for that reporting. Well, the FDA says it intends to propose a rule to put sugar labels on the front of packages right here in New York City this summer. But there's a lot of pushback from the food industry. They say the labels might demonize certain products or confuse consumers. So we will keep you updated on that. Well, now let's get to the fact that with every bill, your budgets are getting tighter, right? More Americans are starting to get tired of tipping because of that.
In fact, a recent bank rate survey shows that more than 1/3 of people think today's tipping culture is getting increasingly out of control. They feel tips should be based on the quality of service and not societal pressures.
NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans is here with the details from that survey. Christine, I mean, this is certainly a talker, right? It already
really
had us on set. Why are people saying that they're tipping less than they used to? What are you seeing?
So when you look at these numbers, even for something like going to a restaurant for restaurant servers, just a few years ago, 75% of people said they always tip at the restaurant. And then fast forward a few years, and it's fewer than that. It's about 67%. When you talk about hairstylists and barbers, same thing. 63% of people in 2021 said they always tip. But now it's only 55%. And why they're tipping less, they tell these researchers that they think businesses should be paying the workers better, especially when you talk about hotel chains. They get aggravated by being asked to give a tip for the people who clean the hotel room, right? They think those people should be paid more. Also, they say that the tipping culture has just gotten out of hand. You go to get a bottle of water someplace, and the screen swivels around, and then you're asked right there, like, pressure, am I going to pay you a tip on a bottle of water? And also, like, paying on your phone, for example, paying for DoorDash or paying extra when you've already paid a service fee for someone to deliver your food, and you haven't even seen the driver. The food is just delivered to your front door. A lot of people are saying that the phone makes it less personal, and they feel like they don't need to give that tip.
So let's look at this bank rate data. It shows more than half of Americans view at least one part of tipping negatively. So who feels the most negative about tipping?
It's so interesting that tipping has always been kind of a flashpoint, but it's even more recently a flashpoint. People feel like, look, You're asking me for money all the time. Baby boomers have the biggest negative view on tipping, 72%. And I think that's probably because they have seen the biggest difference over time. It used to be, like, I can remember my grandparents would begrudgingly pay 50 cents on the bill. You know, my grandpa would, and my grandma would come and run back and put more money down on the table. But it used to be just restaurants and hair salons. Now everyone is asking you for a tip. So interesting, it was the boomers who felt the most sort of like put out by all this tipping requests.
Yeah. It is interesting because, like, you think, yes, I will absolutely leave a tip for somebody who served me all night sitting in a restaurant, but it was like new once we started this whole touchscreen thing that for even a coffee, right, that you're being asked to tip. It is not all bad, though. A lot of people apparently do. Well, this makes sense. You feel good when you do leave a generous tip. About a third of people feel that way. And some workers say they are actually seeing an increase in tips. Where's that happening?
So that's what's so interesting. The increase in tips has been more recent. When you go back to 2021, there's been a decline in the tipping. But the workers who are saying they're getting more tips are people who at a sit-down restaurant. If someone is putting water in your actual glass, they feel like, yes, that was a service, right? Hairstylists and barbers, again, that's declining a little bit, but still, it's still a majority tip their hairstylists and barbers. Taxi rider and drive share, that's where there's a lot of kind of controversy about how much you should be tipping them, because you've already paid a service fee, and then you pay a tip, then you're asked to pay another tip sometimes. And you all have not had any interaction with the actual person.
So real quick, when should we tip?
You should tip when you are going to a restaurant. You know, anybody who's ever worked in a restaurant knows that is a service, and the service can vary. You need to tip when you go to a restaurant. You should tip your hairstylist. And as Al Roker just said to me, it's a little self-defeating if you're not tipping the person who makes you look good. Counter service, that's at your discretion. You know, if you just go run in someplace to get a bottle of water and you don't want to put an extra $2 on there, you don't need to. Car drivers, 15 to 20%. These are sort of the standard. Hair and beauty, 15 to 20%, and housekeepers, $4 to $5 a night.
And if you do that, they leave you more shampoo and towels.
Yes, they do.
There
it's
you
good
go.
karma.
See?
Good
Christine
karma.
Romans, thank you very much. Quite the talker.
A new survey from Shopify and Gallup highlighting the challenges of becoming an entrepreneur in America. Whether it's coming up with the money to start or just the personal risk involved, many owners face a bumpy road to a successful business.
However, it's not stopping them from taking the leap of faith. So we've got all the tips to help you open the doors to your dream store and keep them open.
Let's bring in Shopify President Harley Finkelstein for a closer look at these survey results. Good to have you with us, Harley. So walk us through some of the biggest findings here. What are the main challenges and motivations for those who are looking to start a business?
Thank you for having me. It's always great to come on and talk about entrepreneurship. Look, our entire mission at Shopify is to make entrepreneurship easier, more common, more accessible. We sort of live and breathe entrepreneurship here. But we also know, and I think it's quite clear now, that entrepreneurs and small businesses are really the backbone of the economy. We have millions of stores on Shopify right now. We power about just over 10% of all U.S. e-commerce. So we're really at the epicenter of what's happening. But we want to go one level deeper and get a bit of a pulse check or a vibe check on what is happening right now. And so together with Gallup, which is the leading global research company, we surveyed 40,000 people in the U.S., and we found some really interesting trends. I'll give you the high level and then we can go deeper, but there is a trend right now towards entrepreneurship. More people, in fact, 6 out of 10 people we surveyed want to be their own boss. And we're seeing this not just in the US, but globally. We're also seeing that fewer people are interested in working as employees for someone else, but 35% of people surveyed said that. So here's also what's driving this. The barriers to entrepreneurship, they still exist, but the reality is that the cost of failure in 2024 has never been lower. So I think people are ready to become entrepreneurs, and it feels like the time is right now, and I think we need more entrepreneurs.
What's interesting is that at least 1 in 5 business owners mentioned having a previous business that did not succeed. First of all, I just want to give them props for trying again, because that can be tough, right? So for those who are ready to bet on themselves, what are some tips you can give people who want to open a business, don't know where to start, and they hear a stat like that and they're like, okay, maybe not?
Okay, so we found a couple things when speaking to current entrepreneurs. First of all, the top 3 reasons people want to be entrepreneurs is 1, opportunity to earn more money, more than half said that. 2nd is flexible work schedule. And 3rd is to pursue a passion project. So many people have hobbies or things they do on weekends and nights, but they want to commercialize it. But as you said, more than 1 in 5 current business owners have previously started a business that did not succeed. Now, 4 in 10 of those who face failure experience multiple setbacks, but what we also noticed was that they all talk about courage. And they told us that the most helpful resources for starting a business either the first time or in subsequent times was one, prior experience. Even if they did not succeed previously, they brought a lot of those lessons into their new business. The second was encouragement from people they know. This is where creating your own sort of mini network or mentorship dynamic or relationship really helps. And the third is obviously having a little bit of personal savings, not a lot, but enough that means you can actually focus.
We have a minute left here, but what do these numbers tell you about the future of entrepreneurship in the U.S.? What do they say about how the process and experience of becoming your own boss is actually going to change over time?
Yeah, so a couple of things I think we're seeing here. Certainly one of the biggest concerns from those considering entrepreneurship has been finances. 40% cited that as a top challenge. But there's lots of solutions to this. Small business grants and loans, crowdfunding, at Shopify. We have tools like Shopify Capital. So actually, I do think that the cost of failure has never been lower. I don't think entrepreneurship needs to be an all or nothing. You can start now, you can experiment. But great companies like ours, like Shopify, we're trying to find great new ways to make it a little bit easier to build businesses and to succeed and to create the next Aloe Yogas and Supremes and Glossiers on Shopify. So we're really proud of what we're doing here, but I think there's never been a better time to start a business than right now.
All right. Harley Finkelstein, important conversation and some useful advice. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, we are once again flipping the script.
After the break, my conversation with the talented Chris Colfer. He started appearing on your screen more than a decade ago. Now he's a best-selling author of 20 books. I'm going to bring you more on his new project, bringing the supernatural to kids. That's next. We're back with our series, Flipping the Script, featuring people on screen, on stage, and on the page, shining a spotlight on diversity. Enter Chris Colfer, known for his role as Kurt Hummel on the hit TV show Glee, where he earned Emmy and Grammy nominations. But acting and singing are only two of his tremendous talents. He's also a celebrated author, having just released his 20th book for young readers. As we celebrate Pride Month, I sat down with Chris to talk about his latest work and why he does not plan on slowing down anytime soon. What does Pride Month and Pride mean to you?
For me, Pride means that I'm part of a community that, despite the tragedies and hardships that we've all gone through, we know how to have fun and celebrate the good things in life.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. All right, so we are here to talk about Roswell Johnson Saves the World. This is your 20th book?
20th book, yes.
Can you even believe it's 20 books?
I can, yes, because I am exhausted. But no, it's crazy. It really did sneak up on me.
This is your first sci-fi book?
First sci-fi book.
What should we know about it?
Oh gosh, I think it actually might be my best book. I will leave it.
If you say so yourself.
I know. I'll leave it to the kiddos, and they will tell me. They'll tell me to my face at the book signings if they like it or not. I enjoyed writing this book more than I've ever enjoyed writing a book before. So naturally, I thought I was doing something wrong. You can imagine my relief when I got some good reviews for it. So I'm hoping the kids like it as much as the book critics did.
Your shirt matches the theme. What inspired you to do a sci-fi book?
I've always been fascinated by space and our galaxy, our solar system, and I've always been a staunch believer in extraterrestrial life. And so I thought that was a great world to set a children's story in.
You saw a UFO once, you think, right?
I did. Well, I think so, yeah. It still has not been explained what that was. Could it have been a balloon? Yes. But I've never seen a balloon move like that.
So you're a believer.
I'm a believer, yes.
Just people got to know you as an actor, but making this transition to author, which you did 10 years ago or longer, what has that experience been like for you? Why do you enjoy writing so much?
For me, writing is the exact same thing as acting. It's all different versions of playing pretend. It's all storytelling. And I think that's what I am addicted to, is helping people escape their problems and escaping my problems in the process. It was really tough when I first started writing because I was known as an actor, so a lot of people, I think, had a hard time accepting me as an author and accepting that I write my own stuff. But now I think book 20, I think now they're probably just sick of me. They're like, okay, you're an author, go home.
They're like, we think this is going to stick now after 20 books.
I hope so.
Have you, I know your books aren't necessarily an LGBTQ theme, but you have put LGBTQ characters in your books, right? Yeah. Why is that so important?
I think just representation. My books do well overseas too, so I'm able to get LGBT stories in places where we're not accepted. So I'm very proud of that, and it's very exciting that I have the platform to do that.
What's the difference that can make when you get those books and those stories into places where we're not necessarily accepted?
It could save someone's life. You just never know. Like representation is so powerful that even just a commercial, someone could be watching a commercial in a very, very oppressed country and see two men holding hands in a car commercial, and that could save their life. You just never know.
When you see discussions about book bans and getting rid of LGBTQ themes in books, how do you respond to that? What goes through your mind?
I mean, it's infuriating because I can't believe it's the year 2024 and we still are fighting people on this, and people still think being gay is contagious and it's a choice, and if you erase all representation, people won't be gay. That's not how it works. It's never worked that way. You can look in history. In very, very oppressed societies, there were still gay people. So it's very infuriating, but I'm used to fighting, and I'm not going to stop anytime soon.
When I think of representation, I think it's important to know that the character you played on Glee was one of, if not the first character that a lot of people saw who was gay on television, and the impact that had on people. Do you still hear from people who talk about the difference that made in their lives, and how do you feel when you hear that?
It's amazing. I hear from people in my city, and I hear from people across the world. Like I said before, I think you never know how impactful something is going to be, which is why it's so important to just have as much representation as possible. But it really is, I think, one of the honors of my lifetime to have been that character and to have been that source of strength and resilience for a lot of people.
Our thanks to Chris Colfer for taking the time to speak with us. You can check out his new book, Roswell Johnson Saves the World, out now wherever books are sold. Book number 20. He is 34 years old. At this rate, 60 books, 80 books by the time he retires. It's prolific is an understatement.
Yeah, exactly. It's incredible.
Yeah, very proud of him. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
Good Thursday morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, coast to coast chaos. More wild weather ravaging communities across the country this morning. At least one terrifying tornado tearing through the D.C. suburbs overnight. While out west, scorching temperatures have millions sweating it out, marking a sweltering start to summer. We are covering it all, plus your full forecast. That's coming up in just a moment. Also this morning, D-Day, 80 years later. President Biden oversees this morning, marking the somber anniversary on the ground in Normandy.
In memory of those who fought here, died here, literally saved the world here, let us be worthy of their sacrifice.
More from his remarks as the world remembers the thousands of lives lost on that fateful day. Plus, Sugar Rush will take you behind a new movement that's gaining steam among some top health officials, aiming to add warning labels to the really sweet stuff, just like the labels you'd find on tobacco products. And later in the hour, we are flipping the script with the supremely talented Chris Colfer. You might know him from his standout on-screen roles in Glee or Struck by Lightning, but did you know he's also authored 20 books? Our conversation on Colfer's latest project that's bringing space and the supernatural straight to children. A flipping the script you'll bring us.
Exactly. He's always been doing fantasy, now delving into a little bit of sci-fi.
Very cool. We're going to begin this hour with the latest bout of severe storms.
In Maryland Wednesday, at least one powerful tornado ripped through Montgomery County, leaving a path of destruction. And in Michigan, a tornado killed a 2-year-old and injured his mother. The devastating twisters come as states from California to Texas face the hottest temperatures to hit the country so far this year. NBC News Now anchor Gotti Schwartz has the latest.
So bizarre. This is the type of damage that you expect to see in the flatlands of Oklahoma, possibly Kansas, but this is the D.C. suburbs, and it's a suburb that's pretty hilly, pretty wooded, and yet this is the type of destruction that we're seeing. You've got this root system the size of a minivan that has been pulled out, and the tree, this oak tree, if you follow me this way, this oak tree toppled on top of this house. There were 5 people that were inside of this home that had to be extracted by fire crews that got here. One person was pinned under the tree. We are told that person is now in stable condition. Overnight, terrifying tornadoes tearing through parts of the Midwest and East Coast.
Tunnel clouds spotted in the area.
In the D.C. suburbs, which rarely sees twisters, at least 12 reported.
That is a tornado right there. Look at this. Look at the power flash. The tornado's right here, okay? This tornado is right here.
Leaving widespread damage in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Officials there say several homes were damaged by trees and power lines snapped like twigs, including this one where a family of 5 was trapped.
Everybody was injured. One person did suffer traumatic injury.
Debris blanketing the streets.
We try to make sure that everybody in the neighborhood was okay. That's what we cared about.
And more storms in the Midwest turning deadly. A woman was critically injured near Detroit and her 2-year-old child killed when a tree fell on a home. The National Weather Service later confirming an EF1 tornado was to blame. As more severe storm systems sweep across the country, record-setting triple-digit temperatures are scorching Americans out west. Heat warnings are in effect for some 27 million people from Texas to California, with temperatures spiking 20 degrees above normal for this time of year in some areas.
It was oppressive, and even my 9-year-old granddaughter did not want to go out in the heat.
And with the official start of summer still 2 weeks away, some forecasters are projecting excessive heat could be a sign of things to come.
How am I going to survive August if I can't even survive June? It's been horrible.
Now, we're told a lot of people in this neighborhood do have basements. These people did not have a basement. They were inside of that living room, inside of this home when that tree toppled. But those that did have basements say that when they got those alerts, they went down into their basements. One thing that this community does not have, tornado sirens, because again, this is Maryland. Tornadoes usually don't happen. Back to you.
All right, Gotti, thank you.
Well, let's get more on the extreme heat out west with your Morning News Now weather forecast.
Angie Lastman is here. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Unfortunately, the heat not letting up. So folks continue to swelter across parts of the Southwest, stretching from Texas to California. We've got 27 million people under these heat alerts. Much like yesterday, we're going to see those temperatures surge into the triple digits. And here's why. We've got this really strong ridge of high pressure that's centered over the western half of the country. And that means one thing. We've got sinking air, and basically all of that hot air confined really to this same region for days and days. And this is going to stay in place at least for a little while longer, and long enough for us to see some of these records potentially being broken in some major cities today. Specifically, Las Vegas expected to head to 111 degrees this afternoon. The record for this current date for the high temperature, 110. So likely to beat that. Phoenix expected to go to 113 this afternoon, and the record currently stands at 111. You can see other spots like Salt Lake City near record heat, Fresno maybe tying record high temperatures today. We've got Albuquerque headed close to the triple digits, and Roswell too expected to hit 106. As we look ahead to tomorrow, really more of the same. It's kind of a wash, rinse, repeat through the rest of our work week for this region. We're still going to be dealing with the triple digits, temperatures running 10, 15, even 25 degrees above normal for this time of year, and still the potential to break some of those records. So you see Las Vegas once again, one of the spots that we're going to see with the chance to see a record-breaking high tomorrow. Tucson will be close. El Paso will be close. Fresno will be close. It's really just more of the same. So we still are going to need a couple of spots to find some cool, or a couple of times to find some cool spots across that region through the end of the work week and even into the weekend. Not a lot of relief. Speaking of the weekend, not a lot of cool air in place across the state of Florida either. So if you're looking ahead to maybe Saturday and you're going to be outdoors in Tampa, remember temperatures are expected to be quite warm. These are feels like temperatures. So this is your heat index in Tampa on Saturday in the middle of the afternoon. 104 is what it's expected to feel like. We've got really warm water surrounding the peninsula. It's going to be an uncomfortable couple of days. Miami is expected to feel like 107 for the peak heat index on Sunday. Rain, though, in the forecast here as we got up early this morning across parts of the Northeast. We deal with some rain for the Mid-Atlantic, too. If you had a soggy commute, you could see a couple more rounds of that here as we get through the rest of your day. And here's why. We've had a warm front work through. Now we got to wait for the cold front to come through. So still some rain and maybe a couple of strong storms on the table for us from New York to North Carolina. Nothing widespread severe that we're expecting. But again, we can't rule out one or two of those storms. And unfortunately, the rain stays in the picture as we get into your day tomorrow. So we'll wrap up our Friday with some of these kind of showers rotating in on the backside of that system across parts of the Northeast. It'll be a little breezy, a little cooler across the Great Lakes as that front works through. But overall, fairly quiet day when when it comes to rainfall. We're not expecting a whole lot in the way of flooding and things like that. Otherwise, looking ahead to your Friday across the Gulf, it'll be hot, it'll be humid. We got plenty of sunshine for the Great Lakes. We look ahead to Saturday, a nice day really for much of the east. We'll see some thunderstorms across the state of Florida along with that heat. And of course, those record highs aren't going anywhere across parts of the west. We'll get a little bit of a break for some of folks in the southwest, but we'll still have a couple locations where we'll see maybe some record-breaking highs. The heat and humidity stays in play for folks in the south, and then we've got the Sunday across. We've got Sunday across the Great Lakes looking sunny and cool. Remember, that cold front's going to bring some more mild temperatures. So if you're looking for a bit of relief and some sunshine, I say, I don't know, I might be partial, but Michigan's a good place to go. What do you guys think?
Why are
Minnesota, not bad.
Minnesota, they are so sick of rain there.
San Diego, we get it.
Yeah.
We know it's always nice there.
I know everyone in Minnesota is sick of the rain. Like, done, over.
Yes.
So,
well, they'll get a bit of a break this weekend.
Very good news. All right, thanks, Angie.
And I did bring my umbrella today.
There you go.
See, following my advice.
Today marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day, the beginning of the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe that turned the tide of World War II. President Biden joined veterans and other heads of state at this morning's ceremony on the beaches of Normandy, France. Here's NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander.
Good morning to you from here at the American Cemetery in Normandy, where 9,388 American service members are buried, many of them laying down their lives on D-Day 80 years ago today. This is such a humbling, a solemn place, and these hallowed grounds really are a testament to service and sacrifice, all themes that President Biden is echoing today. This morning, 80 years after one of the greatest military missions of all time, President Biden visiting with some of its heroes. Happy birthday to you. Among the fewer than 200 American D-Day veterans still living. The president commemorating the unprecedented Allied assault that turned the tide in World War II. On this anniversary, also harnessing the heroism of that day to highlight the urgent threat that now hovers over Europe, drawing parallels to Ukraine's effort to fend off another dictator, Russia's Vladimir Putin, bent on expanding his reach. On tap while President Biden's here, a face-to-face meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, whose forces have battled the Russians for nearly 2.5 years. This trip comes at a pivotal point in the Biden presidency, with the 2024 campaign growing increasingly bitter and concerns among some of America's allies that former President Trump, who threatened to withdraw from NATO, could return to power. The president and first lady later joining French President Emmanuel Macron heading to Omaha Beach, where some of the 150,000 allied troops stormed ashore, the site of some of the deadliest fighting between U.S. forces and France's Nazi occupiers. This year's pilgrimage particularly poignant, perhaps the last reunion for America's greatest generation. Among those honoring them, Oscar-winning actor Tom Hanks.
We have a few men and women who I see as being 16, 17, 18, maybe 25 years old, and they might be in wheelchairs now, but they're represented by everything that is here. Were it not for their choice to come and do the right thing 80 years ago, you and I would not be staying here right now.
Earlier, President Biden greeting one of those veterans, saying to him, "You saved the world." The president will be back in this region in Normandy again tomorrow, visiting what is called Point du Hoc, where American Army Rangers famously scaled an incredibly steep cliff before attacking and overtaking German bunkers, some of the first steps toward reclaiming this continent. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you.
Well, in Gaza, local health officials say an Israeli strike on a school compound in central Gaza has killed at least 30 people, including women and children. Israel's military says Hamas militants were operating out of the school, sheltering Palestinians. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez is in Tel Aviv with the latest.
Hey there, President Biden and the leaders of 16 other nations today releasing a joint statement calling on Hamas to accept the ceasefire deal that's on the table. They say there is no time to lose. The CIA director was back here in the region yesterday trying to move negotiations forward. But today, there is new bloodshed in Gaza.
Overnight, a deadly new Israeli strike on a UN school compound in central Gaza. Israel's military says it precisely targeted two areas where Hamas operatives who took part in the October 7th terror attack were hiding. But UN schools have been a refuge for civilians seeking safety throughout the war. And this morning, hospital authorities say the attack killed around 30 people, including women and children. Halia Mansour sits next to the body of her son Ahmed. He was the youngest of my sons and my dearest, she says. The IDF says it delayed the bombing twice to avoid hitting innocents, adding a number of steps were taken to reduce the risk of harming uninvolved civilians during the strike. But the attack evoking memories of this strike last month on a camp for displaced people in Rafah. At least 45 killed after Israeli bombs aimed at Hamas commanders sparked a firestorm. Flames sweeping through tents made of wood and plastic as families slept. While the fighting rages in Gaza, Prime Minister Netanyahu visiting the Israeli border with Lebanon, warning Israel is prepared to launch a, quote, very intense military offensive to stop attacks by Iranian-backed Hezbollah militants. Meanwhile, new details emerging about the shooting attack at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut and the gunman wearing ISIS insignia who's now in custody. The Lebanese army tells NBC News the Syrian national was shot 4 times, but is now in stable condition.
Now, the UN says at this point it is unable to say whether or not there were Hamas fighters inside of that school. They're saying in a statement, we remind all parties to the conflict that schools and other UN premises must never be used for military or fighting purposes. And they add more than 450 people have been killed inside of UN facilities since the start of the war. Back to you.
All right, Raf, thank you.
Day 4 of the Hunter Biden federal criminal gun trial is now underway. We're expected to hear from a key witness today. Hallie Biden is slated to be on the stand. She's the widow of Hunter's late brother, Beau, but Hunter also had a romantic relationship with her. During court yesterday, jurors heard from women from Hunter Biden's past as prosecutors tried to establish his history of drug addiction. He's facing felony charges related to the 2018 purchase of a gun while using narcotics. NBC's Ryan Nobles has the latest from Wilmington, Delaware.
Hey guys, good morning. And at the core of this case, did Hunter Biden know he was an addict when he checked a box on a federal form before purchasing a gun? Prosecutors have brought out a long list of witnesses with intimate knowledge of his behavior at that time, and they say they could wrap up their case as soon as today. Federal prosecutors spent Wednesday building the case that Hunter Biden spent 4 years in a cycle of drug abuse. A window of time that includes the day he checked no on a box of a federal form saying he was not an active drug user in order to purchase a gun. Biden has pleaded not guilty to the charges. He used cash for a lot of things. A good amount of it was for drugs, said Zoe Keston, a woman Hunter met at a strip club in New York. The pair launched a relationship filled with drugs and alcohol. Keston testifying at one point that Hunter was, quote, smoking crack every 20 minutes or so. Also on the stand, Hunter Biden's ex-wife, Kathleen Buell. She told the jury how she learned her then-husband was abusing drugs. I found a crack pipe on July 3rd, 2015, she recalled, adding that it was on their porch. Buell testified how his drug abuse led to the end of their marriage. When she confronted him, she said he acknowledged smoking crack. She routinely searched his car for and found drug paraphernalia before their daughters would drive, including into 2018 when Hunter's accused of lying on the form. But the defense team is working hard to plant a seed of reasonable doubt with the jury. Defense attorney Abby Lowell pressing agent Erica Jensen about the form. Do you know whether the defendant checked those boxes, he asked. Not from my own observation, she replied. I'm not qualified as a handwriting expert. The prosecution rebutted with Gordon Cleveland, the man who sold Hunter the gun and watched him fill out the form. What did he write? The prosecutor asked. Cleveland said he wrote no. Still yet to testify, perhaps the most important witness, Hallie Biden, the widow of Beau Biden, Hunter's brother and a former romantic partner. She was involved with Hunter when he bought the gun and tried to throw it away at a grocery store. And we do expect Hallie Biden to testify today. And then when the defense gets the case, we could hear from Naomi Biden. She is Hunter's daughter, and she may have a different interpretation of the events around that time than her mother, who testified yesterday. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Ryan, thank you.
Now let's get to the race for the White House. The short list of running mates for former President Trump has reportedly been whittled down to just 4. Sources tell NBC News the top candidates have been sent vetting materials, a sign a decision could be coming soon. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns has the details.
The battle to be former President Trump's running mate heating up and the field narrowing. Sources tell NBC News Trump's shortlist of VP candidates have recently received vetting materials, and 4 men have emerged as this year's possible Veep Stakes top contenders. 2 sources say Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, and Florida Senator Marco Rubio are on the list. And one source says Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina is as well.
We need Donald Trump.
All 4 candidates now fierce Trump loyalists, defending him during his New York hush money trial in the courtroom and on the air.
This is the quintessential show trial. This is what you see in communist countries.
This legal proceeding is disgraceful.
But what about Trump calling our country a fascist state?
They're trying to throw him in prison for a paperwork violation, Wolf.
Vance has proven to be one of Trump's staunchest defenders, an attack dog in the media with strong base bona fides. The other senators on the short list possibly giving Trump access to voting blocs he struggled with in the past. Scott with black voters and Rubio with Latinos. The Florida senator also ramping up his rhetoric on Twitter in a decidedly Trumpian style.
Who are we going to send back to the White House? Trump!
Trump likely has a different interest in billionaire Burgum, a one-man war chest who can help fund his campaign, which has lagged behind President Biden's in fundraising.
He's been a successful businessman. I think Trump could tout that.
But while President Biden's running mate Kamala Harris became the first black woman to ever serve as vice president, half of Trump's new narrower list of prospects are white, all of them male. And most of them have tussled with Trump in the past.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
Would you ever do business with Donald Trump?
I don't think so.
Why?
I just think that it's important that you're judged by the company you keep.
Rubio famously sparring with Trump during the 2016 primary, with both men getting personal.
He's always calling me Little Marco. And I'll admit, the guy, he's taller than me. He's like 6'2", which is why I don't understand why his hands are the size of someone who's 5'2". Have you seen his hands? They're like this. And you know what they say about men with small hands?
He hit my hands. Nobody has ever hit my hands. I've never heard of this one. Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it.
Now a group of former Trump detractors turned loyalists waiting in limbo on a fluid shortlist as the former president mulls his next move.
Our thanks to Dasha Burns for that report.
And it seems as though the third time was the charm for Boeing. Its Starliner spacecraft finally lifted off yesterday after the first 2 attempts were scrubbed. Later today, the Starliner and its crew will dock with the International Space Station. NBC News correspondent Marissa Parra reports from Cape Canaveral.
Let's put some fire in this rocket. Let's push it to the heavens.
All eyes on Boeing Starliner, the space capsule perched atop a United Launch Alliance rocket at Cape Canaveral.
And liftoff of Starliner at Atlas V, carrying 2 American heroes.
Blazing into the skies with a crew on board for the first time.
Stars for all of us.
Veteran astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams on a mission to the International Space Station. Celebrations as Starliner and its crew reached orbit, on track to dock with the ISS.
When we expand our fleet of spacecraft, what we're doing is expanding our reach to the stars.
After NASA's decision to partner with private companies to take crews to the International Space Station, this milestone moment coming after years of delays. Boeing Starliner behind schedule and over budget. A failed uncrewed test flight in 2019 plagued with software glitches. More recently, launches delayed due to a parachute that wouldn't hold the weight of the capsule after re-entry and flammable tape in the capsule that needed to be replaced. Comes after setbacks with the ULA rocket, including a helium leak and a valve issue led to a canceled launch in May.
Proceed with a scrub.
Then, last week's attempt stopped with less than 4 minutes before launch due to a software problem.
The vehicle's trajectory continues to look good.
No room for error, as Boeing has been at the center of controversy for the company's commercial aircraft issues. The infamous door plug blowout earlier this year, costing Boeing in production delays and reputation. A congratulations from Elon Musk, founder and CEO of rival SpaceX, which has been NASA's main way to send astronauts to the ISS for the last 4 years. Starliner paving the way for a new chapter in space travel.
Our thanks to Marissa Parra for that report.
Very cool to get to anchor through that yesterday and watch it live. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.